Thanks for... What are you laughing at?
Hello. Hey there.
You want to do the intro, Bill? Go ahead.
Welcome to Sunday School Bonanza this summer. Actually, it's not the summer anymore. It's the winter.
That was actually pretty good, though.
Not too bad.
I was impressed with that.
Jeff, I can't do the intro.
That was better than anything I've ever done. That was outstanding. Sunday School Bonanza, This Week in Mormons, thisweekinmormons.com. Contact at thisweekinmormons.com. Here we are, Gospel Doctrine Prep, making it happen. We are winding down finally on these this great year of Doctrine and Covenants lessons. And that's why this week's lesson is lesson 43, which is called Take Upon You My Whole Armor of God. Oh, sorry, Take Upon You My Whole Armor. That's it. It sort of is loosely associated with the Doctrine and Covenants. I feel like it's more that they took a citation from Doctrine and Covenants, section 27, and then decided to use the Strength of Youth pamphlet to back it up.
You can see both of them on LDS.org. I mean, they have that in common.
Yeah. But there's going to be some good stuff today.
Yep.
Bill and I are going to try to talk a little bit more at a real level about some of these things and not just be flippant about,
Right.
dancing and having capped sleeves on your shirt, ladies, or whatever it might be.
It's important to us.
First off, the attention activity, we might as well get this out of our systems.
Yeah, this is
so we can get serious. So this is what your teacher might do, and if your teacher does this, what you need to do is ridicule him or her. Okay?
In your mind, not in class.
Or in your class. I would not be opposed to throwing chalk in their direction. All right. So if they might draw a stick figure and then draw a bunch of arrows in a circle sort of surrounding said stick figure. Then the teacher might ask you, what is this?
And you should say Samuel the Lamanite.
Say Samuel the Lamanite.
Because it looks like arrows going
I'm
at
still
a guy.
pulling for an Iron Maiden, but you don't
Iron
seem to
Maiden's
be into
fine.
that. That's a little more sinister.
Yeah.
It is, of course, the fiery darts of the adversary flying at us. And if one is not wearing the whole armor, the arrows are just going to go right, they're just going to hit us. I wish there were a diagram later in the lesson that showed the arrows actually penetrating his
Piercing
body.
the guy.
Yeah.
It'd be hard because he's a stick figure. I mean, that's a small
just
target.
Going right through. Or at least have an arrow that shows the armor like blasting it away.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Patronus.
Yeah,
a Dementor.
like a Patronus charm.
This is the greatest lesson I've ever done. Proud of this. Let's read here in section 27 about the armor of God. We talked about an earlier verse in section 76, of course, talks about the war in heaven. There's a conflict. That's what it's trying to drum up here. So let's read in 27, the last 4 verses here. It says, Wherefore lift up your hearts and rejoice, and gird up your loins, and take upon you my whole armor, that ye may be able to withstand the evil day, having done all, that ye may be able to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace, which I have sent mine angels to commit unto you, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of my Spirit, which I will pour out upon you, and my word which I reveal unto you, and be agreed as touching all things whatsoever ye ask of me, and be faithful until I come, and ye shall be caught up. That where I am, ye shall be also. Amen. So I like some symbolism here, the armor of God. We're going to talk about putting on this armor. So to repeat, breastplate of righteousness, feet shod with the preparation for the gospel of peace, a shield of faith, a helmet of salvation, and a sword of God's Spirit and his word through revelation. So the main question, it's an obvious answer, but Bill, what would be the consequences if you did not wear your armor all the time?
Well, you could, unless you're really a stick figure and can't be hit, you're going to get hit with an arrow. And, that can be sort of the death of some part of your soul. I mean, that sounds kind of cheesy to say, but, on a lot of the different pieces of armor that we're supposed to put on, they're meant to protect, our virtue. They're meant to protect our happiness and our faith in the way we see the world. And, if you don't observe these things, you can lose part of that.
And I would like to even take it a step further. Even if you're wearing all of your armor, one must be careful, right? Because you can have chinks in your armor. There can still be weak points. And we all have weak points, even when we put the armor of God on. And it's good to know those weak points and not expose them, I guess, to the fiery darts of the adversary. That's a whole different lesson. But since I'm poetic and, I thought I'd use that.
Oh, that was really nice.
So let's the first main thing we talk about here now, we're going to talk about the law of chastity.
All right, we're gonna have this talk. This is my training for if I
little
ever have to
factories,
be a singles ward bishop. Little factories. There, the stork was a lie. We need to have a talk.
You don't know the little factories talk?
Oh, I've heard the factories. I've heard the microwaves.
No, not by President Packer. Everyone, there's a talk. It's called for young men from the late 70s.
Oh, for young men only. This was a pamphlet.
It was a talk.
Yeah.
Just look it up. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's good. Yeah, there's you can check that one out. The Law of Chastity is also for girls. It's for everybody. We don't want Jeff to mislead you there. So,
though you would think the men are the only offenders, the way we talk about stuff.
Boy, the way we talk about it in the church, right? Okay, so we know, and the lesson, there are a couple of quotes that might get read that just kind of cover the basic bounds. That a First Presidency statement that says sexual relations are proper only between husband and wife, appropriately expressed within the bonds of marriage. And then it attempts to list off everything you can do that is not that. But of course, the world just sprints ahead of the First Presidency all the time on coming up with deviant things to do that are not that. So the best way to understand the law of chastity is to focus on what we are to do, which is to express that love within a marriage between husband and wife. And Elder Scott has another quote that explains that it's you shouldn't do this with anybody else, you shouldn't do it with yourself, and it is just for that expression between husband and wife, which is really beautiful. There's another quote from Elder Worthland that I really liked. He says, "One of the most pervasive deceptions in recent years is the notion that immorality is normal and acceptable and has no negative consequences. In truth," he goes on, "immorality is the underlying cause of much suffering and many other problems that are prevalent today, including rampant disease, abortion, broken families, families without fathers, and mothers who are themselves children." And this is something I think that we get picked on for a lot, precisely because of the prevalent attitude that Elder Worthland identifies. People really don't think that being immoral, using bad language, being dishonest, doing all these things that are violations of this armor of God, they don't think they have consequences, and yet they do. And we're sort of, more and more, we're getting to be unique and thinking that there's a connection between what seem like small things in the world, in the mind of the world, and the really, big life questions like, are you having a happy family? Are you succeeding in life? And there's a great talk by Elder Perry. Do you remember this talk where he says in his great accent, it talks about his grandmother telling him to make sure you clean out the corners when he's sweeping the floor?
No.
He says his grandmother wanted him to sweep the floor, and so he started sweeping the middle of the floor, and the grandmother says, "No, you got to clean out your corners." And so he starts with the corners.
Is she Irish?
She might be.
Okay.
That's
right.
I mean, look, I'm from Oklahoma. I don't do Cache Valley,
okay.
right? I don't know what those people sound like. Anyway, she says, get the corners first, and he does, and then gets the whole floor clean. I think it's similar here, right? When you are careful with the law of chastity and you protect your ability to express love in this really powerful way in marriage, and when you protect your ability to use language in an uplifting way without cynicism, without sarcasm, without vulgarity, similar things that seem small, you protect a whole lot more of life. And Elder Worthland draws that connection for us. So I think it's really important. I mean, if you're violating the law of chastity, it really can make you, it seems like you would become more objective, or you would objectify people, right?
Yeah.
You stop seeing them as a brother or sister, and you start seeing them as an object of fulfillment of desire, right? And that's obviously that's not consistent with the way Jesus Christ wants us to love each other. So you lose not only being obedient to his commandment, but you lose an ability to love in the way that he teaches us. And that applies not only in romantic relationships, but elsewhere as well. And an analogous point, I suppose, can be made for the other things that we'll talk about today, but I will not make those points because I don't want to go the whole time.
It's okay, yeah, and I second everything you've said. One thing, of course, we talk about a lot, I'll just interject here. Pornography, of course, the great problem that is in the church. I feel like they've eased off a little bit on the button from talking about it as much as they have in the past. But like you said, Bill, because I thought of this when you were talking about how we objectify people. A lot of these problems with chastity isn't just that you're committing immoral acts or struggling with something. And a lot of times it is a struggle. I don't want anyone who's listening to this to think that you're a bad person, that you are, that you cannot turn around, that you can't take care of things. You're not. You're human. Everyone has issues. You can sort them out, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But But things like this, they skew the way we view people. And I'm saying you see more and more as there's more scientific research done on pornography, just from a strictly secular standpoint, how much it changes an entire neurological balance in someone's head with the way things they expect, the way it skews what men expect in the bedroom from their wives, and it destroys relationships because of that. Not just because of the whole, you don't love me enough thing, but more because it warps the way you view the way relationships should be, and oftentimes teaches that women should be subservient to men, which is also the worst. So, sorry to interject there. But,
but I mean that's exactly I think that is the point that Elder Worthland is beginning to address. Although he doesn't, obviously, for reasons because he's talking in general conference, he's not going to go into that much detail. But that's the point: is that there is a connection between these commandments, these sort of simple things that we just sort of associate with for the strength of youth, but there's a connection between them and a rich, full, loving life that we have to keep our eye on, lest we be tempted to treat these things lightly like our colleagues in the world do.
Exactly. Speaking of treating lightly, now we're going to power through the rest of the lesson.
Yeah.
But great section here. Be honest. What does it mean to be honest? President Faust said, quote, "Honesty is more than not lying. It is truth-telling, truth-speaking, truth-living, and truth-loving." Which I like, because just because we don't tell a lie, but if we intend to mislead someone, we're still not being honest with that individual. But obviously life is full of many small temptations to be dishonest, and I think those are the ones that really test us. I think it can be very easy to not, tell big lies, for example.
Right.
But it can be very easy to just tell a little what you view as an innocent white lie about something that you don't think matters at all. And it might not matter. It might have no effect on anything in the long run. But the one thing it does have an effect on is one's own integrity. And that's all it is. And it's a matter of being honest. And I don't say this to be by any means pharisaical, because I'm as imperfect as anybody else. But I wish we would stress some of this stuff a bit more in the church. Like, especially when we assess worthiness and interviews with ecclesiastical leaders. We harp so much on these things that we're supposed to avoid, whether it's chastity stuff, word of wisdom. But we're also supposed to be honest with our fellow man. And often we say, yeah, I am. But how great would it be if we spent more time to really dig deep and wonder how honest we really are with our fellow man? And it's funny because, Bill, you're a lawyer, so
right.
Obviously there's that. And there have been people that have told me, well, there's business honest, and then there is honest. And we don't need to get into that debate. But ask yourself, how honest are you about everything? Because it's very easy to drum up exceptions for ourselves, situations where we say, no, it's better that I do it this way. But what's expected of us is to be honest with ourselves, to not rationalize or excuse sin, and to be honest with other people, of course. Sometimes we might need to choose our words, choose how we deliver news, but to be honest with people at the end of the day. That's all I have to say about honesty.
Well, I think there's that is exactly what needs to be said. Be honest. The last section in the lesson covers language and the way we use language. And
you're the worst, Bill.
I know. I use so many foul words.
I just said
we
that
should actually go through.
It said I should be edifying, and so I chose to do the opposite.
You chose to not be edifying.
I chose to be.
So let's use Jeff as an example.
Okay.
We want to use language that's uplifting. So,
okay.
Jeff,
right.
How did you just fail?
Well, I told you that. What did I say? You're terrible. Is that what I said?
Yeah, it was something like that.
I basically demeaned you.
Yep. By so doing, Jeff, Elder Oaks would tell you that you have distanced yourself from God. He has this great quote in here. He says, profanity and vulgarity, actually you didn't do either of those, are sins that separate us from God and cripple our spiritual defenses by causing the Holy Ghost to withdraw from us. I've always thought the language point is really interesting because after all, words are just words. And I served a Spanish-speaking mission, and it became very clear to me after I got home that certain words I had learned in Venezuela that you would never say were just totally normal, non-offensive words in other parts of the Spanish-speaking world.
Yep, I know exactly what you mean.
And certainly that's true in all languages. And so, I've always thought about, well, what is it? I've met some people who will swear a little bit, and it seems not as bad when they do it, so I try to understand what is at the root of this. And I think it's using language that is profane because of the effect it will have on others. And are you using it, if you're really just using profanity as profanity, in your heart there's usually a desire to kind of get attention or shock people or make them uncomfortable by using a word that they and you know is inappropriate in some way. It's inherently a prideful exercise. It's an attention-getting exercise. And that's how it distances you from God, because it's sort of you're staking off your own linguistic place where you know the Spirit's not going to be invited because you're a little too cool for that. And that's inherently a prideful thing to do. And so adopting a more wholesome speech is both reflective of and protective of your ability to create that kind of spiritual environment where the Lord feels comfortable sending the Spirit to bless you.
Yeah. And it can be hard. I don't want to be self-aggrandizing or anything, but at the risk of doing so. I mean, because I regularly host This Week in Mormons, our longer show, and we go over stuff. And we treat a lot of it with kind of a tongue-in-cheek, humorous approach to Mormon issues and news.
Right.
But there have been many times when I catch myself, for the sake of comedy, for the sake of being entertaining, being over the top, being irreverent, and not just in a wholesome way, but, in like a way that's not necessarily edifying, in a way that we do for the sake of humor, but it's cutting stuff down or doing whatever.
And we all do it.
And we all do it. But even in that situation, I often think about it myself and say, is it worth it to do this for the sake of the show? Like, I don't know if I should be doing this. I think about these things because how much better do you feel compared to that? This is terrible because I feel like I'm talking people out of listening to my own podcast. Listen to my podcast or else. But how wonderful is it when you're around those people who take the time to be edifying and to lift each other up. There's a reason why we gravitate towards apostles and prophets, because while they're still human, they're usually great men that have a great amount of love around them and who just want people to feel better about themselves and do better. And you feel that around them. And we gravitate towards people who are edifying and who have that spirit of peace with them in the way they speak. Absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything you said about trying to be cool when you swear and stuff like. I mean, it's it's stupid.
I think that's why kids start doing it in middle school, right? Because it seems so cool.
Yeah, I used to cuss like a sailor back in high school and stuff, but it's pointless. It's dumb.
Yeah, it's childish at its core. There's a question here that it asked that I think is a really good question. What to do with people in your life who don't follow these language rules?
Yeah, it's hard.
As you noted, I'm a lawyer and I work at a law firm. And people around there do not follow these rules. And so I've had to, at different times, I've had different rules where if people are really swearing, I try and say something. But actually, for the most part, I haven't. And I don't know what your experience has been. My experience has been if I don't swear around people, eventually they clean up their language around me. And I haven't really had to make an issue of it.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And I've also seen many cases where I sit there kind of hitting myself like, come on, man, stand up for yourself. Say something. But I just usually sit there and say, people are going to be how people are.
Yeah.
But we have every right to also cut in and say, hey, take it easy. But I like what you said. As long as we set a good example, oftentimes people figure it out. Or when they find out you're Mormon, I've had so many experiences where people say, oh, you're Mormon? And they just, it's over after
Or they're
that.
like, oh, I'm so sorry that I said that around you.
Yeah, which is nice that they try to be apologetic. Anyways, so we got to go. I like that what we laughed about being kind of the most basic lesson, has become one of the longest recordings of Sunday School Bonanza in show history.
Oh, heavens.
Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
You've done it. Folks, we hope you'll find us on Facebook.com/ThisWeekInMormons, @TheRealTwim on Twitter. Listen to us on Stitcher Radio, iTunes, yada, 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 all that good stuff. And, of course, add us on YouTube as well. You can find us there. And we hope we'll hear from you. This love having you here.
Jeff, thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you. This has been Lesson 43. Take upon you my whole armor. Put on the armor of God. Don't get hit by the darts. This week, this is Sunday School Bonanza by